Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel on this very exciting topic on jobs, future of jobs. So, opening remarks from all of you. What do you think on about the future of jobs in this new reality, whether it's the Trump era, new technology, everything put together? What does it look like? What does future of job look like in India? Starting with anyone? You can, ma'am, Ms. Dawra is going to give her first opening remarks.
Okay, thank you. I do not know how long the answer should be, but I'll just give some opening remarks on that. You see, India is a young demography. And if you see the projection for the incremental global workforce over the next decade, something like 24% plus is projected to come from India. And if you look at the trends, there are the traditional employment growth drivers. For example, we have the services sector, trade, fintech, the construction sector, manufacturing, MSMEs. These are the current employment growth drivers. And as we look at the emerging employment growth drivers, startup ecosystem, which is the third biggest in the world, startups are employing more and more people. In fintech alone, we have 10,000 plus startups. The global capability centers, we're very proud about the fact that today India is the global hub for the GCCs. They are employing lakhs of young people at the moment, about 19 lakh plus. There's a NASSCOM estimate. It's projected to go up to 28 lakh plus by 2030. That's how fast it is growing. So even when we look at the digital and the AI interventions, they are also expected to create jobs in the economy. And the integration of AI, the adoption of AI by the IT industry is going to bring a huge productivity increase, which in turn will create more jobs, data analytics, and related jobs, so on and so forth. Tourism, healthcare, these are all areas where jobs are being created, and there's a projection many more jobs will come. So briefly, this is how I think the future of jobs looks like for the country, not to mention the international mobility, which I mentioned in the beginning, in various sectors. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Dr. Radhika Kapoor. Dr. Kapoor, what do you think? What are your views on future of jobs and brief remarks?
So thank you so much, Nivedita. It's a real pleasure to be here. As the Secretary spoke, I think one of the main factors which will influence the future of jobs is technology. So let me focus my opening remarks on that particular driver. Now, the issue of the impact of technology on the labor market and jobs is not a new discussion. It's been happening since the first industrial revolution, and that debate has evolved every time we've had new technological innovations. Now, if we were having this discussion around the future of jobs, perhaps a little less than a decade ago, the conversation would have been very different. Because some of the early studies which were coming out at the time, which looked at the impact of automation on the labor market, produced some very concerning numbers on the job displacement effects of automation. But today, when we are having this conversation in 2025, we can say with confidence that there is not going to be a jobs apocalypse. In fact, to the contrary, what global evidence, some of the evidence which is being produced by the ILO, is telling us that, in fact, the augmenting effect of technology is going to be far more significant than the automating effect. And let me briefly explain what that means. Basically, every occupation entails certain tasks. So when technological innovations such as AI, generic AI come, there will be certain tasks within those occupations which will be automated, not the entire occupation, and therefore the entire occupation will not get destroyed. So therefore, there will be some jobs which have tasks, which have a lot of exposure to automation and therefore may get destroyed. But there will be many other occupations where, in fact, because automation will free up time for doing other activities, it will actually enhance the productivity of those occupations. So that's the augmenting effect. So we actually have a study that was produced 2 years ago, which analyzed this globally and looked at the impact of generative AI. And what that study told us was that the augmenting effects of AI were actually far greater than the automating effects. So some of the estimates that, I don't want to throw too many numbers, but just to give a sense of the flavor of the debate, what the study found was that 2.3% of global jobs were susceptible to this automation effect. But on the other hand, 13% of global employment was in fact more likely to benefit from the augmenting effect. And this effect, the analysis varied across country groupings. So in high-income countries, for example, the share of jobs which were susceptible to the automation effect was higher at 5.5% compared to middle-income countries where it was somewhere between 1 and 2.5%. The augmenting effect, on the other hand, was much higher, and that told us that about 13% of global employment was more likely to benefit from the augmenting effect of technology. And that figure was uniform across developing and developed countries, suggesting that there are enormous benefits even for developing countries to leverage from these technological innovations. Relatedly, and this is an important issue which I'm sure will come up during the course of this discussion, is the gendered effect of technological change. And what this study also found, when it analyzed male and female employment separately, what it found was that actually the automation effect for women was double compared to male. So the automation effect accounted for 3.7% of female employment as compared to 1.7% for males. But interestingly, and that's the positive side, the augmenting effect for females was actually much higher at about 14%. So not only was the augmenting effect higher for females compared to the automation effect, but the augmenting effect for females was also higher than it was for males. Now, why am I throwing all these numbers at you is basically to tell you, and these are all potential effects, and I want to reiterate that potentially the augmenting effects of technology far surpass the automating effects of technology. But when we talk about the question of the future of jobs, whether these potential benefits will be realized or not will depend critically on the policy decisions that are made globally. So for every country, how they put in their skilling systems in place, what kind of industrial and sectoral policies they have, what social protection systems they put in place, the safety nets they put for displaced workers, again, industrial and sectoral policies for accommodating workers who may lose jobs, all of these are going to be critical. So the future of jobs is not something which is predetermined. It is something that societies can navigate and set depending on policy choices. And a very important aspect of that transition will be the social dialogue that happens between workers, employers, and governments to actually orchestrate that policy framework that enables us to leverage these technological benefits for inclusive growth, shared prosperity, and more importantly, women empowerment.
Thanks, Radhika. Mr. Hiranmay Pandya, do you agree with the panelists on this? And what do you think especially about the social protection, safety net, and the dialogue between industry, government, trade unions? How is it going?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thanks from my side and my organization for calling me and our organization to be a part with you in this very good evening over here. Thank you very much to Business Standard. Yes, in fact, indeed, I do agree with our other two eminent panelists also, for that the future of jobs are rather difficult. If you use the technology normally, it will happen. But simultaneously, we have observed that also the new jobs are also created out of this, like a gig workers and platform workers and other things also. Something that way also, when you use something as a technology even also, the new jobs may be created and some of the jobs will be right. Likewise in Corona, we all understand about that because of these mishaps, the lots of jobs have been lost also, but the total world is coming up and now it's to their regular path also. That's one. Secondly, which is coming to our mind even also, the jobs only in the India, people and some other areas also feeling that the jobs created in the government sectors only are the jobs called. So it's not that way only to understand that. The jobs created only in the government sectors are only the jobs, but jobs in the different sectors like the private sectors even also which are going very fast, growing very well even also. Say for an example, electronic sector in our developing country, in our India is growing very fast in comparison, and they will come that they will be crossing the economy from the electronic sectors from Japan and other countries too, which is far ahead also. So those things, but for that as mentioned you rightly, the upskilling is very much required for the workforce and the total officers. What is that? It is required because many of these schemes are not able to understand about the total new technology and everything. So recently the ILO has also taken up in the worldwide and even although into the Asia Pacific region even also, and even also the government also taken up some instrumental steps to move forward even also. But we would like to say that even this also, the normal things, normally we should not forget about the human-centric approach for creating the technology also. We say that we should not be the slave of machines. The machines are our slaves, something like that. We should go for that. And then the other jobs will not be affected. Otherwise, the many jobs may be affected. So we should be a very selective on the selective of the technology. In anyhow, the technology is going to come even also. Maybe industrialization 4.0, the other doors are knocking for the industrialization 5.0 also. And this technology of AI is also coming up even also. So let's take lessons from the other countries, those who have already adapted. But from that even also, we are not going to escape from this arriving of this new technology. Simultaneously, as rightly told out about also, because we should talk about, because many jobs are created that is of informal type of work even also. But for that even also in our India, if you talk about 94% are working in the informal sectors rather than unorganized sectors. So we should think of those people, and for that even also the utmost priority should be given as a social security for them. So social security, when we will be approaching or allocating them, I am sure that because of the last G20 in the country, and even also I was heading as a chairman to the L20, we also taken up this universalization of social security. That is one utmost thing is required for this even also. So when this is taken up, I think the many things. And the another area which Madam was also specifying, I would also remind all of that, even the ILO convention on this, Convention 102, which is also taking up the 8 issues, but out of that even also, if you take up the health, rather health insurance or health of the people or whatever it is, if you take consideration of this also, the many more things will be coming up. So in the future world of work even also, lots of work are being taken, but this is what the decent work and HRDD, the due diligence is also required for that also. I think this will be suffice and for me even also many more things, but this is what the initially in the opening remarks I would like to talk to you. Thank you very much.
I'll go to the policymaker, Ms. Zaura. What's happening on labor reforms, or what are the latest? And along with it, I'll also ask about the employment-linked incentive scheme that was announced. What is the status?
Okay. We just heard some very interesting observations on the future of work, future of jobs, and that is very closely connected to policy, as was just pointed out. When we look at the employment landscape today, we will continue to have the traditional labor-intensive sectors of employment. As we saw in the recent most budget, the encouragement, the incentives being announced for footwear, leather, toy making, and also food processing, and a number of other industries and sectors which will support employment generation, including shipbuilding and so on, and urban growth. So these were all aspects of policy which will support traditional employment generation. At the same time, there are policies which support digitalization, digitalization to align, number one, the demand and supply in the labor market, which we already have an example in the form of eShram. We also have the example of the National Career Service Portal, which matches the jobs with the job seekers. So these are examples of digitalization where policy has tried to align the demand and supply in the labor market, plus the upskilling, which again we have SID, the Skills Initiative Digital Hub, where the skilling, reskilling also helps in the employment generation. That's also another part of policy. Second part of digitalization is the social security aspect. Are we able to bring about saturation in social security coverage for the formal market, for the formal labor force, and also the labor force in the unorganized sector, in the informal sector? And that's again where we bring on schemes and we have the one-stop solution of eShram so that the workers can onboard the unorganized sector workers and they can access the schemes. Then there's another aspect of technology, which is the payment of wages and making sure people get fair wages and there's decent work. And these were all aspects which were discussed in the G20 last week as well, where social security, digitization are seen as very important policy interventions to support the future of work, especially like was just pointed out, a lot of jobs being created in the gig and platform economy. That is where a big challenge is seen for the rest of the world, for us in India, how to bring about social security coverage for these jobs, for these people, as well as those who are governed by contractual work, covering them with social security. And as we go forward, of course, I mentioned many other areas which are emerging. There is also, we see the growth of we see a trend in the rise of self-employed people. The PLFS data also shows a trend in the self-employed people, a movement from casual work, casual labor to self-employed. So all this will be dependent heavily on social security coverage. How do we give them social security coverage? Through a pension scheme, through insurance, through health coverage. You saw a good example of policy in the recent most budget, Ayushman Bharat coverage for the platform workers. So these are all policy related initiatives which will take the future of work ahead. Interestingly, you also saw the announcement of a framework for the GCCs, the Global Capability Centers. The Honorable FM announced that there will be a framework, and MeitY is already working for it, to encourage global capability centers in the tier 2 cities. That's where the youth will also join these jobs. So there's a lot going on, and in this context, you've specifically asked me about the employment linked incentive, which was a historic, a landmark policy announcement in the budget last year in July. And that seeks to incentivize first-timers. So all the young people who join jobs, the employment market for the first time, they get incentivized through one wage, 1 month's wage, an extra wage. And that takes care of any costs due to moving from one city to another, or housing, or any other incidental expenses. Then there's another part of the ELI which seeks to incentivize job creation. So while it seeks to incentivize first-timers being hired, it also seeks to incentivize job creation in manufacturing, in services. So it brings together the aspects of both job creation, employability of the first-timers, and also formalization of the labor force.
When is it going to be rolled out?
Okay, so I think that should be soon, because we've had a whole lot of stakeholder consultations. People here on the panel are well aware, and this has not been a very easy, scheme to think through, because we have the experience of the other interventions we've had. We've learned from that how to make the scheme deliver what it is intended for. So we are now absolutely ready for the go-ahead, and I think it should be soon.
This year?
Well, yes. See, if you look at the budget allocation, on 1st February, the ministry's budget is actually at a historic high of 32,000 crores. 20,000 crores of that is for ELI. So that is what was announced on 1st February. That should give you a cue.
So although you said it was not a very smooth negotiation, you had lots of stakeholder consultations, was there any issue that had to be ironed out?
Okay, I did not say it was not a smooth thing, because it's a very significant scheme where the employers and the employees, and we are a tripartite ministry, they will be brought together. And there's incentive for the employee, there's incentive for the employer. Plus, there is the mechanism of the Social Security, the EPFO. Plus, we don't want any leakages in the system. We are spending a huge amount of money on the scheme. 1.07 lakh crore is what was announced, which is a huge amount. The PLI had 1.97 lakh crore announced. This is 1.07 lakh crore. So we don't want to have leakages. We want to have a system where the benefits go to those for whom it is intended. We've had a huge exercise as preparation. We have activated the unique identity numbers of the first-timers with their mobile numbers and Aadhaar, because every payment should be through DBT for the employees, Aadhaar-enabled bridge, and similarly for the employers it has to be linked to the PAN, so everything has to be foolproof. So these are challenges which we addressed, plus the employers had their viewpoint on certain aspects. When you make a scheme, you have to make sure that you take the field reality into view and make a scheme which delivers effectively what it is intended to. So those are the only challenges, and it's been a great experience for all of us to put the scheme together, the draft scheme. Thank you.
So we'll wait for that one. And Radhika, coming to you, number of hours of work, that has been an issue that has been discussed all through our sessions. What is your view, maybe your personal view on number of hours? Should it be 70 hours a week, 90 hours a week? Is there any thought on that?
Well, let me say I don't have any personal view on the matter, or let me say it is not in my place to give a personal view on the matter here. Having said that, as an organization, and working in the team which is called the Decent Work Team for South Asia, I think having a work-life balance, being paid living wages, having safe and decent working conditions is of utmost importance. But on this issue of working hours, I do want to highlight that, when this data on work hours by itself should not be looked at in isolation with productivity. Because you could be spending many hours working, but the working hours are not linked to your productivity. So in a developing country context, and as Secretary has also pointed out, a very large share of the population is self-employed. I personally would be very cautious in interpreting what working hours mean.
All right. Mr. Pandya, I'll ask you about something that you should be dealing with, strikes. Strikes in companies, especially in multinationals. We've seen at Samsung recently, long strike. And then there have been issues at other companies like Amazon, Walmart. What is the best way of dealing with it? How is the trade union coming up? Is there a new movement that you're witnessing?
Yes, from my organization, especially, we are not at all just giving a lot of weightage to the strikes here also. We do believe in the first of all the negotiations. I mean, bipartite negotiations between the management and unions. It should be the first priority. That is one. And at the last resort, if you do not find anything else even also, at that time we should take up this strike even also. That is one. Secondly, I would like to propose that also, in this new era, even as for a last decade even also, you have observed must be. So those things are slowly getting wiped off. People are do not encouraging such type of the strikes and everything also. That does not mean that we should give up our issues. It does not mean that. But it is now, they are coming that we should be very interesting to take up the issues also. Like we should have our research wing even also to find out some data and everything. And I must just appreciate the even ILO for that even also providing us the technical support for all these data and everything, comparison and everything also. Because multinational companies, they are working throughout the world even also. There are a lot of maybe some kind of differences in their giving some benefits, perks and everything also, that could be readily available from the which country, and we should put it onto the front of management even also. So that way, if you could do that also, that you can save the loss of man hours, loss of working hours, everything, that will be in the interest of the workers as well as the industries too also. But at the last resort we can go, and we can go for the strike even also, but this is one the last resort. Every now and then it should not happen, that is one way or other. As some Japanese people are also following some strike criteria, that is what also, just I would like to narrate that way also, can also be followed with the even India and other even also. When shoe company, they were, people have gone to decide on strike even also, the people have decided, the working people, that first of all they will prepare only the left leg shoe. And that's why the total storage to the company, they could not able to sell it out. But the production does not jeopardize, so they cannot blame on the unions that it is not a bad. Then ultimately, then agreement came on. Then what should be the next one also? So they say, okay, now start the production of the right leg shoe. So that's why after comparing the both ways, the everything production does not get jeopardized, and then straight away it was going on the selling it out also. That's why. So kind of this way, is it possible? We should find out the ways even also. Is it this way or something other way also? So from my organization, at least I would like to say also that, and I have seen that many people, when I was visited the Italy also, in that way also, the transportation unit, they had the total research work on these issues also regarding the agreements and whether is also, and then they can approach to the management as a bipartite first, and then they can take the help of the legislations, whatever it is available, and if it is not, that's way. I think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we take a couple of questions from the audience? Yes. Yeah. A lady in the front.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for this session. My question would be, before that, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Arumita Mitra. I head a foundation called Sudhamta Foundation India, and we primarily work on skill development. So now as we speak about skill development, my question would be to both Secretary Madam and to you, sir. So we built schools where we are working on vocational training. Now let's say when we rescue this forced traffic women and forced child laborers, when we are training them, there are not as much of jobs. So let's say 500 people, we are training them vocationally, but there aren't 500 jobs. Now there's another lateral issue of labor migration. As you know, the semi-skilled laborers are migrating to the Middle Eastern countries. They are being exploited severely, and they are working on pay scale twice as lesser than our country can give. But you know why they are traveling? Because there aren't any job. So how can the government can make a regulation where all these vocational training institutes that the NGOs, the Section 8 companies, and also government institutes are making, that there should be a regulatory of direct job involvement and direct recruitment?
Yeah, Ms. Daura.
You have asked, to my mind, three things. One is jobs for those who are rescued, and then number two, aspects of labor migrating and not getting their due, and third, you have said about getting jobs directly. Okay. So, you see, we have a national career service portal. and in the last 3 years, it has mobilized about 4 crore vacancies. So we have people looking for jobs registered on it. We have 40 lakh employers registered on it. A lot of recruitment agencies are also registered on it. And on any day, you will get an average of 1.5 million, about 15 lakh to 20 lakh job opportunities there. You might see that you may not qualify for those job openings because of a skill deficit. So then you can go to the skill side of the portal and get yourself upskilled in the nearest skilling center. So that's one thing. You are an NGO. As an NGO, you could do that, facilitate. We also have model career centers all over the country. The states have employment exchanges, and they also do job fairs. So that's another thing. Very briefly, I wanted to say these two things. And then talking about migration, when our labor migrates, they should get compensation which is which is aligned to their skills and their experience and their qualifications. Which is why in India's G20 presidency, we had a output that we should work on the framework for mutual recognition of skills and qualifications with the G20 countries. We are working on it with ILO and OECD. And once that is in place, our skilled labor gets recognition. It establishes legal pathways for skilled labor where they get compensation which is aligned to their qualifications. In the meanwhile, if there are any complaints, MEA and our Indian missions there take it on board. And what I am to understand, our Overseas Indian Affairs Office, they have standardized contracts which are to be done before the labor migrates. So there are a whole lot of safeguards in place. I will not be qualified to give a very long answer to that, but we do, I'm sure MEA is very responsive to all these things. Thirdly, I don't really buy this narrative of no jobs because I just gave a lot of examples, and if you see the latest RBI data, something like 64 crore plus workforce is an economic activity, whether it is self-employed or it is regular jobs, what Mr. Pandya has also been saying, jobs of various kinds, economic activity of various kinds. Time is up, but...
Yeah, that's all right. That's an automated screen which comes up. We have no control over it. So that's automation. Thank you so much. And, it was a very nice discussion. Hope, wish we had more time, another time. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this discussion.